Other than that, I share with my sister. All right. Good evening. I'm got stage fright with all the people here. Welcome to the November 4th school board meeting. Call it to order. Ms. Talon, do you have pledges to introduce?
Sure do. All right. So tonight I am joined. Come on up. Tonight I'm joined by members of our Barrington Middle School Junior Varsity Volleyball team. They are a group of dedicated 6th, 7th, and 8th grade student athletes who showed incredible grit, teamwork, and heart this season. They were coached by Lindsay Maziars, who was only in her 2nd season of coaching volleyball. The Bulldogs had an unbelievable year. They worked hard, supported one another, and proved that true teamwork is what wins games. This group came together with a wide range of ability levels, yet their shared determination and commitment to improving every day is what made them unstoppable. Out of the 12 teams in their division, only 4 advanced to the playoffs, and our Bulldogs battled their way to earn that 4th spot. Entering the playoffs, they were the underdogs, but they kept their heads high and left everything on the court. They went on to defeat the top-seeded team, Rochester, and ultimately won the JV Volleyball League Championship right at home at BMS in like a nail-biter. It was awesome. Their dedication, communication, and excitement carried them all the way to the top. We couldn't be more proud of these 12 outstanding student athletes. They truly are what we want our Bulldog athletes to be, so we're so proud of them. So please join me in welcoming the JV volleyball team as they lead us in the pledge. And we have our captains, and Cece and Genesis. They have their very exciting plaque.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
But wait, before you leave.
Very exciting.
Yeah, this is important.
So it's a bit of a proud mom moment because my daughter is on the team, Lily. She's gonna hate that I'm pointing her out specifically. There she is in the back.
And Cece, I'm gonna point out Cece, my daughter, right here.
Are you a parent if you don't completely embarrass your child? But we're just so proud of you guys, and thank you to for the time and the effort you guys put into it. I know that it was a super emotional end. That game was, I feel like sometimes you guys do it to us on purpose so that we have like a heart attack and it makes it really exciting, but I was on the edge of my seat and it was fantastic. So thank you, and thank you to the coaches for the time and the effort they put into it. You guys are awesome, and we just so appreciate everything you do to highlight our school and highlight each other, and for the work that you put in. It's a really amazing thing to be part of a team, especially one that varies by grade, and I hope that you guys found a sisterhood together that you'll carry on with you and for those who are going to another school as you graduate, and for those who are going to be going on hopefully the varsity next year. So thank you guys so much. And then we have a little parting gift for you just to say thank you for all your hard work.
And I just have to say, when you beat Rochester, Carrie and I were here, and we stopped the meeting and
Yes, I did. I love that. I did say on camera that Jamie won.
That's amazing. It was a big moment.
It was a big
we
moment.
felt it all the way over.
Yeah. So thank you guys. All right.
I'm gonna hand it on.
If you have a sibling here, take another pin too.
Yeah.
Yes, if you have
And for
something,
siblings, too.
let me know.
You too, because it's not here.
Oliver got one. He's right
Also, if you go to varsity, they can all stay with me next year if they'd like. They can all stay on Jamie.
That is also an
They can also stay here forever.
Oliver got one by doing that. Give one to John, so
Can't let Jason carry.
Everyone got one? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sitting down, they're like, Mom,
I mean, you guys can stay for the whole. You're riveting. No?
Thank you.
I mean, how can you stand to leave?
Rick told me to make sure the two of you didn't try to leave with them.
I could sneak out. I could sneak out.
Bye, Cece.
All right.
Second thought, maybe they should.
So I think we have a couple of amendments to the agenda.
Just want our high school rep is
Well, and the
out.
select board rep.
Oh, yes, we usually just sort of pass that one by, but yes, I'll make the motion. For amending, please.
Second.
Discussion? All right, so we're removing 6 and 7. And Peyton, if you're watching, because I'm sure you are, we hope you feel better.
Good job waiting to say 6 and 7 until all the middle school.
Now, isn't there 4-1 or something now?
There is 6, 7.
How is that the word of the year?
Well, now it's memorialized
Only
in the school board
encouraging
meeting.
Forever.
We can edit that out. All right. Approval of minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, public? Those in public? All right, anyone online? Don't see any hands raised. There is another opportunity later in the meeting. All right, so, Ms. Dallin, back to you.
All right, back to me. All right, so we currently have 414 students enrolled at BMS, although we did have 2 students start the process this week, so that number might go up. We have an excellent 96.8% daily attendance rate with, and this is an update to what's in your packet. We have 1 student with 5 or more unexcused absences, but the family is aware and we're working with them. Currently, academically, our focus in math success right now is in numbers and operations because that is every student currently needs work in that standard. So across all 4 grade levels during success block, we are working in groups of about 14 or smaller with targeted instruction in numbers and operations. So they're getting direct instruction from a teacher, and then they're also getting personalized iReady MyPath lessons to support that as well. The October theme was goal setting, and any parent who attended a conference today should have reviewed the goals that their students set in advisory. November is self-awareness. Additionally, teams are going to identify, now that the honeymoon is over and we're seeing an uptick in behaviors, each grade level team is going to identify like one of the peskiest behavior they're seeing from students, and we're going to target that for re-instruction and review from Thanksgiving break to winter break. Current big focus, and I'm so glad he's here, a huge shout out to Mr. Fortier. A current initiative is NEASC. Our NEASC decennial visit is coming up, and that's a big deal. Essentially, this is the one that gets us our accreditation from NEASC. So Mr. Fortier's played a huge role in organizing that. That is coming up November 17th to the 19th. There will be a team of educators from across New England spending the entire day for 3 days at BMS to get into classrooms and basically tell us how we're doing, as well as how we've improved since their last visit in 2023. They'll also be meeting with small groups of staff, students, parents, other community members, and thank you to Moira and Carrie for volunteering to represent the school board in that meeting with NEASC. We had a really fun Friday at BMS. We had a school-wide costume contest for Halloween with a lot of participation. Ms. Sherman was one of our guest judges, so thank you for that, our resident Halloween queen. We had a 6th grader who won the costume contest by building a homemade vending machine costume, which was really amazing. We had a series of volleyball games, very appropriate for tonight. The 6th versus the 8th grade volleyball match was one of the most exciting. Ultimately, the 8th grade came out on top, but they were soon crushed by the staff in the staff versus student game. So that was really fun. Everyone was really well behaved, lots of excitement, just a really, really positive experience for the whole school. Another athletic shout out to our girls cross country team who won the Southeast League Championship for the first time in school history. Really, really awesome. And Natalie Drake, who I believe did the pledge last year, a 5th grader, won our D3 state meet. So she beat like lots of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Wow. So shout out to Natalie as well. Looking ahead, we have band and chorus concerts coming up. Our Troublemakers will be performing at the soiree. End of trimester 1 is on November 25th. And then Miss Kane just announced that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory will be this year's drama performance, so a lot of excitement around that. One piece of walkthrough data, Mr. Fortier and I have made it a point to make sure when we're doing walkthroughs and mini observations to check in with at least one student when we're in a classroom. And we're happy to report that each time we've engaged a student in those conversations, they've been able to explain what they're doing in the assignment, why they're doing it, and what they think may be happening next or what the follow-up would be. So it's pretty cool, especially for a 5th grader to be able to explain that. So that's that. Can I entertain any questions?
That's good news.
Very good, thank you.
All right.
I'll jump in then. The other principal packets reports are in the packet. So a lot of the things in my report we'll actually talk about as we go further down the agenda, so I'll skip over those sections because we'll hit them later on. As far as hiring personnel goes, this is one of our most challenging years, I would say, in the dozen years I've been here as far as staffing paraprofessionals goes. We have quite a few openings right now, and it just keeps, like, as soon as we can hire them, somebody else has a very legitimate, justified reason to need to move on. So in addition to some newly identified students with some pretty significant developmental needs, and then we've had some move-ins as well that have one-on-one support in their IEPs from other districts. So we're doing our best to manage that. We've updated the posting to highlight some things in our para agreement that I think sets us apart from area districts, one being that we offer New Hampshire retirement for anybody who's listening.
It's just uncalled for, Deanna.
What's that?
Highlighting what you offer, but neighboring districts don't.
Well, I mean, sorry, but
We do offer it.
we do offer it, and I'm trying to support Barrington here. So we're going to continue, to do what we can in that area. Our staff is amazing at picking up slack and filling in gaps, not only with supporting individual and small group student needs, but we also have some long-term leaves on the horizon sooner rather than later coming up. So we're scrambling a little bit to come up with plans A, B, and C to cover those openings as well. So we will keep you posted there, but we always end up coming up with a creative solution to get the job done. So we'll hope that that continues to be the case. As far as some building highlights go, district-wide, we did have Katie Pagnotta in, who's a local therapist. She's been working with our teams around the neuroscience of behavior, strategies to address not only our own reactions to the behaviors that we're seeing, but also the reaction of our students and how to manage that. Grade levels and buildings have identified either grade level or building-wide goals with Katie's support, and she was also our keynote speaker on opening day, and part of the need that came out of the behavior task force last year. So we're just trying to continue that refining and continue that thread of supporting student behavior, and really it's, you know, the changes in behavior we've seen over the years. Let's see, what else do we have going on? She has also had the opportunity to work directly with our guiding coalitions and some time, not a ton of time at this point, but some time with paraprofessionals as well. So we're trying to make sure that everybody who interacts with kids has the same language. ECLC hosted a fabulous Move in Mountains camping theme at Trunk or Treat. BES finally got to attend a dry whole school field trip that was rescheduled multiple times. And Elizabeth already highlighted the work that the BMS has been doing for the NEASC visit. So that is a huge undertaking. So exciting stuff going on in all three buildings. Financially, we're sitting very solid right now, 700-ish plus thousand in the bottom line of funds. So we're doing well there, and we will go into the rest of that paragraph is all on proposed budget, so we'll jump into that a little bit later. Committee work at this point, policy, we just scheduled a meeting coming up. Tonight you will see a chunk that we're continuing to clean house with outdated and no longer priority or relevant policies for rescinding, and then we have a few others new on the table, and a couple of little adjustments, so we'll talk about those in detail at the very end of the meeting. I just wanted to shout out to Bob Benincasa as part of one of our wellness goals. We want to keep staff up and moving, engaged, especially when it's a long, full-day workshop. So also consistent with our focus around student behavioral changes, we had presenter Polly Bath in on October 10th, and then during that day, Bob organized a variety of options for staff to go into the gym and have a movement break. So that's always fun to see people go in and engage and laugh a little and kind of refocus themselves. So let's see, we have 3 different agreement conversations going on currently. Paraprofessionals, teacher insurance will open up this week, and we've been having some in-depth good conversations around administrator contracts and agreements. So I think once we finalize that piece, we will have looked at all of the major kind of clusters of categories of workers within the district. It's easy to lose sight of some of those other positions that aren't in a collective bargaining agreement. So we spend lots of time and energy on the educator agreement, the paraprofessional agreement, but we don't want to lose sight of admin assistants, secretaries, and then, of course, our administrators. So doing some good work there. Portrait of a Learner work will continue at some specified times throughout the year. That kind of work always takes you longer than you anticipate, but getting those rubrics together to describe all of our characteristics. And again, Elizabeth has been really spearheading that work. So we're hopeful now that the first round has been done, that we have the templates and the other definitions will go a little more smoothly. We have settled on, I believe, the November 18th for our next town collaborative meeting. We will be looking at the proportional need or use of a school resource officer if we were to entertain that. We talked about that early on in the budget process. And then we have School Care and Health Trust coming in on the 5th, so we can get an update on health insurance. We found out, Vicki attended the annual meeting, we should have our rates on Monday. We were really hoping we were gonna have them for tonight. But again, we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the budget conversation. Let's see, and we were also hoping to have quotes for the sign on Route 9 so that when we come back to the next meeting, we can talk about the cost share and an official vote on that piece as well. Elizabeth mentioned part of school goals. I think one of the major changes this year has been that kind of intentional focus and work with the master schedule. And there hasn't been a classroom that I have walked in so far this year, and I've been in multiple, that the kids and the staff are just spot on to whatever the schedule says the content is supposed to be, and the kids are able to say, oh yeah, we're working on this, and let me show it to you. So that has been a consistent thread this year for sure, with a focus on the My Path through iReady. So November's hard because it's a bunch of choppy weeks. We call it No School November for a reason. But one thing we continue to talk about is if we want to see improvement in any one area, we have to make sure that those rise to the top, even if you have a field trip or even if there's a day off that week. You need to be able to have the flexibility within your schedule or in your thinking with your schedule to make sure that those things remain at the top of your priority list. So we've been talking about that as a leadership team and then talking to staff about that as well. So additionally, the administrative team attended a training with iReady last week. It's just nice to go in and look at reports and refine your craft around. We use so many platforms now. It's a reminder on what to look at and what they mean is always welcome. That's an overall highlight there. The rest of it we'll talk about.
So we won't actually have information about the sign at our next board meeting because your collaborative meeting's
Not
next
till
up.
afterward, yep. I was hoping to have it. My hope would be is we pay it out of this year's funds and not wait, but we don't know yet what the quotes look like. I'm gonna jump into budget. Sure. All right. So this is our 4th budget-specific meeting now, I think. So we'll finish up the remaining lines tonight, but before we go there, you have a new default and proposed in front of you. So the proposed, as you will recall, will change slightly as we inch toward the hearing once we get, yeah, Sarah, you have a packet up there. You do. Once we get, those unanswered questions start to become answered. Like, we still have the Oyster River tuition rate in there is accurate. Co-Brown's is still our best guess based on history. We're still waiting on Dover's this year number so that we can do our best guess for what to budget for next year. And as you know, we just talked about, we're still waiting for the insurance amount. So we'll see where that lands. Given the few conversations about enrollment, best practice, class size, early intervention, the new proposed that you have in front of you is without one preschool and 4th grade. Because as a reminder, we talked about how the class size in 4th grade wouldn't change this year to next given the size of the grade level, 3rd grade to 4th. The other adjustments that we made is we increased the sublines due to that 5-year average usage. OT full-time position was added, and as you can see, that brings us to 4.12%, which is $283,511 over default. Vicki did some quick math because I said, hey, will get us under 4%. So really the tipping point here is the health insurance percentage. If it goes, if it comes in at 17% or lower, we will dip below the 4% mark, which will be a little more
Can you repeat
palpable.
that?
Sorry, can you repeat?
So right now in the budget, in the proposed, is a 20% increase for health
Right.
insurance. If it comes in at 17% or less, we will go below the 4% mark.
And the OT position, did you add it at the 2-day or the 4-day?
We put it as full-time.
Full-time, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a- Well, I know we haven't really talked about, could you help understanding how preschool, like how you project those numbers now for next year? Because you don't know when they turn 3 and where they come from and.
So unfortunately, and now this has been so many years, I don't even remember, like probably at least 15 years ago, they changed the rule. So we used to get a list of birthdays. Anybody who already lived in town, birth records that were receiving early intervention supports, we would get a list of birthdays. So we wouldn't know identifiable information, but you would at least know, hey, this student is receiving services, either clinical or in the home, birth to 3, and you can anticipate a referral coming in. So they stopped that. So we don't know what's coming up for birthdays, kiddos turning 3 in the upcoming year. But what we do know is we need to have a 50-50 match, right? So half of the kiddos in the room have IEPs, at least half do not, tuition students, to be there for peer models. We've had 1 year in 12 years where we exceeded the numbers that felt like best practice, appropriate for that age group in our preschool. So if we rewind the clock, when we added that 3rd session, we really needed 2.5 sessions. So when I was down at that building, we felt like we were really growing with that younger population, but we only had 2 classrooms, so it was 4 sessions, and we pushed the limits a little bit to see how big was too big for 3 to 5-year-olds. We settled on 10 to 12 is the sweet spot. You start to go above 12, and developmentally, independent living skills, those kinds of things just are super challenging, with 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. So 10 to 12, I would suggest, is the sweet spot for preschool. And we look at just historically who we've had. The numbers don't even come close to, in the last 8 years, to what we would need to be federally and state compliant with our preschool program. So if you have 4 sessions of, say, 12 kids in a session, right, you can have 6 with needs and 6 with not. So that exceeds by quite a few students the number, the capacity that we would need in those 2 classrooms. So we had looked for a half-time teacher even back then, couldn't find anybody, went for a full-time and thought, great, tuition students will offset the salary. COVID hit, we've never come close to having 72 kids in the preschool program of 3 teachers. And I think an additional factor to that has been the needs of people's home lives have changed. There's less people able, given the economic climate, to stay home and be able to drive their kiddo over for a 2.5 hour program, depending on your age. So they either are staying home, doing an in-home full-day child care program, or they're going to, a full-day program. So I think it's just become more challenging for families to have a stay-at-home parent or grandparent or whomever is caring for the child to be able to access our program. So we just haven't filled those slots to be able to offset the salary of that full-time position, which was our intention all those years ago. So given the tough, economic climate and increases in budgets, both on the school side and the town side over the years, and we're looking at, taxpayer rates, it just feels like the fiscally responsible thing to do. A little unnerving and upsetting, because then you're looking at loss of positions, which then leads into the next item. So I'll pause until I see if we have more questions.
When I had one child go there, it was a mix. He was like a 5-year-old with 3-year-olds, and then we had one there where it switched at some point to a 3-year-old, 4-year-old. Do you see being able to maintain 3 and 4, or needing, Where do you see that going?
So right now, it's pretty even. You can't really predict, right, how many kiddos are going to turn 3. So there have been some cases where families would prefer AM over PM, and we've had to be pretty strict and say, the 3-year-old program is in the morning. You know, there's pros and cons, you know, there's justification for the way that we have done it. I would say we will have to have the flexibility, depending on space in sessions, if it were to happen, to then go back to that previous model if necessary. I mean, I can't guarantee that because I don't know how old kids are going to be when they enter the program. But right now, it's pretty even, and we could maintain our current split and model with the 2 classrooms.
And given that birth rates are down,
Exactly.
it doesn't seem like.
Yeah. And given that our kindergarten has been down 4 years in a row, I mean, that's where you're like, ugh, you know. So we just, we know, again, with the building in town, we're just gonna have to remain as fluid as we can in meeting students' needs, but also not having class sizes of 10.
We also, because, I mean, we keep saying you have to have this 50-50 split. By law, you don't have to have a
You don't have
50-50.
to,
It's
right.
best practice, and we want to maintain that. But, because when the preschool came on board, it was strictly a special ed preschool. And then when we went to this model, you know, there were a lot of folks in town who were not happy that we were kind of subsidizing preschool for families. Because, as you're saying, it's actually more likely to be families who do have the ability to be home and things like that. So it's not an equitable opportunity either. But we did promise local daycares that we weren't taking business from them. That was not our intention, and that we wouldn't. And so when we have like this really inverse of typical to identified students, it seems like we're kind of going back on that.
Yeah, and it never came to fruition that we filled those spots. If the need for daycare or our preschool program were there, and we were like, oh my goodness, you know, we're in the high 60s, or we're nearing that 72 mark, it will be a slightly different conversation. But, and there was a year when we had a high need that we did do a special ed only class. Because you could send all your services in at once and really maximize what students were receiving. So even in those 4 sessions back then, one session was some of those kids would stay, and then they would have some peer models for an extended session. But we did do one special ed only, and you have a continuum of services. So you can go anywhere from placing in a community preschool and providing a little bit of, say, articulation support or language support, all the way down to, you know, a special ed only grouping, or even home services. So there's a variety of ways to approach preschool. We just are required to service our 3 to 5-year-olds.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so I guess we're up to early retirement incentive plan.
So that one conversation feeds into another. So of course, when you're looking at reductions in force and you don't have retirements, you know, that is the sensitive, unfortunate part of things. So then we started having preliminary conversations around, you know, we've talked in the past about how we do have quite a few staff members on the upper end of things and have worked many years in their career and maybe just waiting for that right time to retire. And what that right time is means different things to different people. I've never put together an early retirement plan before, so I had to do some legwork to figure out what that would mean and how we properly go about it. So there are multiple steps. Obviously, it starts with you all saying, yes, this is something we think is, you know, a positive approach and a good idea. And if the board says, yes, we want to go there, then there's a variety of other things we have to do. First and foremost, starting with a memorandum of understanding with the union. So that would have to happen because it's compensation. And then we also need to adopt a policy. So if we choose to do this, I already have a sample. We would bring a policy forward. And really, it's policy procedure, right? Because you want to have a procedure for how many spots are you opening up? And then if more than that number or fewer than that number come to the table, what's your next step, right? So almost like our Oyster River High School lottery process, we have to have a mechanism for too many. So we have to put a policy in place for that. Next step after that would be to then open it up to appropriate staff. So within your MOU and your policy, you would define what an early retirement eligible person would be. A lot of those definitions come from the New Hampshire retirement system. You know, you have to be vested, you have to be at an age, there's a formula, so that would all have to be part of the process and the agreement. So it's a tight timeline, but doable. So it's a matter of determining if, yes, we want to explore this option, and then what we would look to for the compensation to be, and then also how many. So some of the basic rules are, you can't say, for example, we will only take 2 elementary certified people, right? It has to be an equitable, fair process. So you have to allow anyone in your collective bargaining agreement who qualifies based on your criteria you're gonna set to come forward. So we may get into the situation where somebody is working in a position that isn't a direct match to the ones that we might be reducing, and then you have to then go to your last hired and say, okay, now this is open, so you can either take this or then there isn't an opening. So it's not super clean, but it's a viable option. So I did send out an all-staff email just to say to people, this is something we're talking about. And, for some people, they need to call New Hampshire Retirement. They want to meet with their financial advisor. They need to talk to their spouse or, a partner, whatever. And so I wanted to give people as much time to think about, like, oh, this is something I've been considering, and maybe I should get my ducks in a row so that if the opportunity is there, I'm prepared. So even though I didn't ask for interest, I did have one person already say, that's something I want to learn more about. So if we're only seeking 2 and one without even a timeline has already stepped forward, maybe there will be a second who is thinking in those terms.
So just to be clear too, because if it went to all staff, it's just for teachers on the collective bargaining agreement, it's not for
Anybody who is
paraprofessionals.
included in the current BEA
Yeah.
collective bargaining agreement, yeah. So
Tonight, you're hoping or looking to see if we'll move forward with starting the process. At any point, if we decide we can't or anything, we're not married to it because of a vote tonight.
right. No, tonight is just saying, yes, we want you to take the appropriate steps to do the things to get this in place, because I have to get a policy together and have a conversation with the union representatives to then get the details of an MOU together. So if we don't do that pretty quickly, we're gonna run out of time, and then we're gonna be up against the budget hearing, and we won't be able to do it.
I think it makes sense to move forward with it, especially in light of the fact that we could at any time say we don't want to do it. But again, I think, for me personally, I want to support the new position for the occupational therapy? Because there again, there's state and federal regulations that require you to do certain things. And they don't care. I shouldn't say they don't care, but they're pretty stringent about the fact that there's certain services that have to be provided. And so, when you ask to add staffing and you're having reduced class sizes so that you should be looking at reduction in staffing. That's why I think this is kind of a little bit of a thing where you can put it out there. I mean, again, I'm not a huge proponent of reducing staffing just for the sake of doing it, because it does affect people's livelihoods. And so you want to make these kind of decisions very thoughtfully, and that's why I'm kind of intrigued by the possibility of an early retirement and looking at insurance. I think that's a big deal to people. It was a big deal to me when I decided to retire, is figuring out how I was going to, take care of my family from an insurance standpoint. And so to be able to have that at least as an option for somebody that might consider retiring early, it certainly, if nothing else, it buys them a couple of years to kind of figure out what they want to do. And so I think it makes perfect sense to move forward in that direction. The part I feel a little bit bad about is there's a fair amount of work for you to have to do to put this in place, and then we kind of have to hope that maybe there's a couple of teachers that are interested in it.
Well, it's a learning opportunity, right? And it's not bad to have the policy and the procedure in place
Yeah.
if it happens in the future.
Yeah, and I mean, if it turns out that we don't have teachers that are interested in it, or we can't make it work as a board, we still have the opportunity to come back and make different decisions. And certainly, again, I'm sensitive to the fact that the taxpayers, I've said it a couple of times, the taxpayers are going to get a $2 or a $1,000 hit on their tax bill coming out in the next few weeks, just before Christmas. And a 4% increase is certainly going to have an impact on the tax rate, and that doesn't even take into consideration the state education tax and the county tax and whatever increases the town might have. And at some point, the taxpayers are going to stand there and say, enough's enough. And, I think we also have a little bit of an obligation to, we have elderly that certainly get, the town does a good job putting tax breaks in place for the elderly, but some of these, even getting the tax breaks, if they're not able to capitalize on these enough, it forces them to sell their property and perhaps leave. And there again, if they sit on a big enough piece of property, and somebody pulls up and says, tell me when to stop stacking $100 bills, that might mean that all of a sudden we're going to have more houses in town. So I would just like to see us move forward with putting something together for an early retirement, see what comes of it.
Any other comments?
I had a question. So I was reading back the document that you provided us initially for the early retirement incentive that was presented on the 28th. So I just want to clarify how it was presented from the conversation we're having today. Should all the stars align and we have 2 qualified people, will we no longer be looking to do a reduction of force for those grades? Or is that going to continue to still be a discussion of the pre-K and 4th grade?
So if 2 people choose early retirement,
Right.
it will take the place of the pre-K and a 4th grade reduction, so no other staff would potentially lose their job, right? Because 2 people
there wouldn't be
would
risk.
So there wouldn't
There
be.
would not be
Right, I just want to be clear
There'll
about.
be fewer 4th grade teachers and one less preschool teacher regardless.
Regardless.
This just will prevent us telling people they
Okay,
need to.
I just wanted, I wanted to clarify,
So
because the
with-
way this document's written could be read.
So without an early retirement incentive, if nobody comes forward between now and December 1st and says, I'm retiring, and usually we would have them by now, right? We had a couple people who were on the fence who have now said, it doesn't work for me, either from a financial or an insurance perspective, right? But I do know that we have a couple people who are like, maybe, if I have the right incentive, that's what it's all about. So yes, we would still in the budget reduced by those 2 positions, but we wouldn't be, I'm going to use the old terminology, pink slipping anybody, right? We wouldn't be going to
It doesn't
any
qualify
staff
as a
member
reduction of in
and
force.
saying, you
Got it.
now no longer have a job.
Okay.
So, but to be totally
Yeah.
transparent, though, let's say I have somebody who, you know, is, I hate to name a position because then people read into it and they think it's that person who's leaving. So it is not at all. I'm just making something up here. I'm just going to
Certified in
say,
Chinese.
I'm just going to say unified arts. Oh, actually, that's a great. We'll
Latin
use
teacher.
Latin.
Yeah, I was
because
just
Darcy-
saying, Latin teacher.
Latin, we'll tell him he has
Yes.
to listen to the meeting. So let's just say we had a Latin teacher, right? They're clearly in the collective bargaining agreement. They're clearly eligible. That individual's been working for, 30 years. They meet the age and the vesting requirements of New Hampshire retirement, and they say, I want to go. Chances are we don't have any other qualified
Right.
Latin teachers to fill that void. So, I could go to your last hired and say, well, I'm sorry, you can't do this position anymore. But if you want to go get a site-based learning plan to be a Latin teacher, we can offer you that and support that transition. We're not going to find another Latin teacher anyway. So this is a very far-reaching,
But it's scenario-based.
it's a
Got it.
scenario. So Latin was probably a wild card example. So let's just say unified art in general, right? Or even a Spanish teacher. We have Spanish teachers. You're going to be hard pressed to find somebody on staff with that area of expertise that you're simply going to shift. So there's a huge difference between preschool teachers, which have a very specific skill set and certification, your general population of elementary teachers, especially since we have a middle school model where we don't really specify content-wise. We do, but we don't have to because of the way we're configured with the state until 7th and 8th grade. So we can have an elementary certified person, kindergarten all the way, through 6th grade teaching any of the content areas. So that's where the majority of your people are. That's where the likelihood is that somebody leaves and you just maybe shift some people around and they have to teach a different grade level. So it's not, yes, if the stars align, you'll have,
Yeah, I just wanted to
we'll
clarify
move a preschool
that.
teacher into an elementary grade level spot, and an elementary grade level retirement will then not result in an additional elementary.
I just think it's
grade.
important that we highlight the specificity
Yeah,
of
I mean,
the
it-
situation
yeah.
for anybody listening.
It's muddy
later.
and confusing,
Yeah.
for sure. It's
Yeah.
really dependent on the people who come forward and what their assignments are.
Yeah.
And then the qualifications of your last hired to fill in those gaps that are created by the early retirement incentive. So, we've already looked at,
Okay.
literally based on, just so we'd be prepared, like, when were you offered and when did you sign your contract, right? Because some are in on the same days, so we had to go by interview and offering, because you don't want to penalize somebody for when they maybe were on vacation and couldn't come in and sign their paperwork. So we know who our last 3 hired were. We know what their certs are and their qualifications, and, I also have I don't know who may ask for the incentive, but I know who my teachers are at the top end of things as well.
Question for you, because so is it prohibited by the CBA? So maybe our last hires aren't certified in the position, but someone else is, that we could just move them and move this person to a position
Yeah,
that.
there's a whole RIF grid right in the CBA, so, and
No, but I mean, so we don't have to riff anyone. So
Yeah.
I am K-3 certified instead of K-6 certified. But some of my kindergarten teachers are K-6. Does the CBA allow, say, I'm gonna move a kindergartner teacher to 2nd grade so that this person can move to kindergarten where they're certified?
yeah, that's why our contracts, when we issue them, say teacher and don't say grade level. They don't specify, so that we can make some movement if needed.
So you're looking for a
Motion to explore it.
Just to get the policy in place.
I'll make the motion.
And
When does
to-
policy meet again?
next meeting.
I would second that motion.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
The full-time position that you've added for the OC, is that to hire a position or is that to contract with Stratford Regional
That's
for 5 days?
that's to try to hire first. And then
Is that cheap, that should be cheaper?
we can get a 4-day-a-week contracted position for the same as we can get a full-time 5-day-a-week. So if we could hire somebody,
You would
that would be
get that extra
amazing.
day. Yep.
If we can't, Katie's already confirmed with Stratford Learning Center that they have somebody in the wings for us to fulfill the needs of our student body.
Okay, thank you.
So we have options there, and I think we should actually post it a variety of ways. So have the full-time position in there, but also know that we have Stratford Learning Center as a backup for the number of days that we need, and also post a half-time position, because you never know.
So it's more cost-effective to the taxpayers to hire a
Yes.
full-time position
Far
rather
more
than.
cost-effective. Yeah.
More
Thank you.
bang for your buck.
Yeah, we made
More
this
OT for your
shift.
buck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we made this shift with our BCBA services quite a few years ago. We were getting 2 days of contracted service for the same rate of a full-time employee.
That's important to make sure that people understand that, the people that are gonna be voting for this stuff, and certainly the people that are paying the bills, it's important for them to understand that it's more cost-effective that we're obligated to provide the service. And if we can hire somebody versus contracting these services out, we'll get somebody 5 days a week for what we would have got for 4 days a week.
And it's better for the relationships
Right.
with the students and the families as well.
That-
As we go forward, I think it's so important that you continue to report out as detailed as possible, like you've done tonight when we were asking these questions about all the steps that we are taking to make a formal RIF the absolute last thing that we're doing. Because I think the things that you said after we ask those questions are so important for our staff to hear and understand that every measure is being taken so that we don't do that. And I think sometimes we have all these conversations and sometimes they don't happen in front of the camera in that way. So I just think as much as we can, continue to do that.
Absolutely. Yep, agreed. So we will do some exploring, and actually the exploring has been done. I will now have some conversations and formalize some documents, and it's going to just be a decision down to the wire, I think. We're going to be up against, our numbers for the hearing and making decisions as we go that are going to best meet the needs of students, staff, and community. Tricky year, and for different reasons than other years. All right, I'm going to continue with the remaining line items. This will be probably one of the fastest parts of the conversations of the evening. So we have 2,300s remaining, which are school board and SAU. That overall section is up $80,000, and it's a combination of things. One is a decrease in health insurance, strangely, because just change in elections. And then an increase in the administrator contract pool. Like I talked about earlier, we had established the subcommittee for administrator contract discussions to formalize things like their evaluation process and when contracts will be issued, and to not rely on a different group of people getting what the teachers get, right? Like, that's just loose conversation and not in an agreement anywhere. So those conversations are ongoing. So that is the increase in that chunk of line items. 2,400s is building administration, and that increase is primarily due to salary increases as well as admin assistants and secretaries. Same thing with financial, salary and benefit changes within the financial department. And then the last two are transportation and food service. Bridget is here if you have specific questions, but those are the increases due to the contracts that she so wonderfully negotiated and put into place, created with them last year.
I have a question about the pool. So the pool is for wage increases?
And also 2% for health benefit offset, and then wage, salaries, and other benefits such as additional holidays. So it's all still in discussion, so it's just a total at this point.
Because then I see increases. Explain again the increases from, like, what was, when it says it increases from, like, proposed for 25, 26.
Yeah.
And then proposed 26, 27, and then there's an increase. I still don't understand that.
So do you want me to talk just about where we came up with the number?
No, she's talking
Okay.
about the
Okay.
way the program does it. So it looks as though the salaries are proposed because it shows in the proposed line, but that's because last year, so just like when we do, when we do a warrant for teacher increases, right? So the first year, it's not in the budget, it sits out on a separate warrant. So maybe if that will help if you think of it this way. The pool is like a separate warrant, and then the actual adjustments to the salaries get taken from the pool, actually applied to each individual, but you don't know that until later, so it shows up proposed, but it's their current actuals. And then the pool would be the increase for next year. So it's very confusing, because it looks as though we're putting an increase in two places, but even though it says proposed, the salary is this fiscal year salary, not what's being proposed for next year. I know that's clear as mud.
Yeah, no. I have to think on that. That still doesn't make sense to me. I understand it with the teacher's contract, but then it says proposed is the same, and then the next year, we see it. But,
Yeah, if you look over, if we pulled those lines from year after year, like there's a pool and then there's the actuals with the current year says proposed. I don't know how better to explain that than.
We're running 5 buses for high school education.
Does the language still say 5?
It says 5 buses, 178 days.
Commonly, I feel like historically, and Vicki, correct me if I'm wrong, we historically bookmark that in case of increased ridership.
But currently, we're running 3 buses, 1 for each school.
Correct.
Thank you.
So we can contract it with them 4 or 5?
The contract allows us, if we needed to increase, right, so sometimes, historically, my understanding is sometimes like Dover, the bus has gotten quite full, and there's been a need to add an additional bus. We have not encountered that at this point, and I think it's also the challenge of hiring.
We're not asking for 5 and not getting them, we just haven't asked for 5.
We are not asking them for 5. Correct.
Good point of clarification.
Yes, thank
That's
you.
what I was trying to-
Is this budget for 5 buses? It is. But currently we're paying for 3.
Correct.
Thank you.
I thought we got clarification we could use Diane. But we're adding $6,000 saying no longer using van.
Nope, that's old language. What page are you on?
23.
Page 23, on 2700 line.
Yep.
A typo.
Oh, right.
Red
Yeah, that can go.
transportation.
Yeah, that can go. Good catch.
Are you the red?
It's a $6,000 savings.
I'm green.
If you can find 34 more, it gets us under 4%. About 40 grand gets us there. Open enrollment.
We're really not anticipating any increase in food service?
Yeah, well, there's an increase for food service.
The 25,
The
the 25,000.
It's on this.
Oh, okay, I'm just looking at the budget. Page 24, that's a big bold zero.
Oh, mine on the default?
Mine has a
Oh, maybe I am on the default, sorry.
Yeah, you're on.
All right.
That's
That makes more sense.
It would be great if.
That would be great, but it was making no sense to me. I was like, how is that possible? Okay,
Yeah,
that makes,
no,
that's, sorry.
That's there.
I would like them color coded, that would make me, just,
We can actually do that. Well, we can run the default in a different color, so that would actually help.
no, I could pay attention, sorry.
No, don't be. There's a lot of paper. Remember the days when we used to color code everything? Pick up your salmon colored. I'm not doing that. That was a lot.
Remember when you wrote IEPs and carbon paper, 4 copies at once?
You could never read the last copy.
All right, any other questions on any of those lines?
Nope.
All right, so Emily,
All right.
There it is.
Okay, so you have your report, but I also did make some slides depending on what the piece is. So this is kind of my first presentation for you since my July workshop and your end of year, which I had been here for a hot minute, and now I've been here for a few more. And so this summer, we really looked at iReady and we looked at Acadience for end of year. And that sort of pointed me in the direction, just as I'm onboarding, to think about looking at performance in ELA and math, and then determining if those results are indicative of a change in performance just by cohort, by different students in different grades, or if that points to kind of an issue at a certain grade level or with a certain topic, just to try to figure that out. So I haven't figured all of it out, but some clearer information, I think, just kind of looking at what we have, and I'll sort that out with you. And then the other piece is just sort of looking at, are these scores making it clear that intervention might be a challenge, right? That our intervention may not be the correct amount or in the right way if we have large numbers of students who are not where we want them to be. So far I've spent time kind of getting to know teacher teams, not everyone, and just kind of talking with other districts through conversations, conferences, meetings, visits, all kind of things like that. So the highlights of the report, other than kind of the data piece, are just that we are refocusing on using data at the district level as well as the school level. So I think it's been probably a conversation for a long time, but really making that work in sort of a deliberate and strategic way, I would say, has been a new focus for us to look at iReady kind of as a district level SAU team, then as the administrative team, and then at each of the schools in more detail. So I think the middle school has been doing that well for a while, but I think the other schools, it's a little bit of a refocus to have them kind of take a peek. So, first thing that I want to show you is actually not EOI. It is EOI, it's not BOI. So, we're talking the beginning of the year data, but I was not able to present the SAS data to you, which was end of year this summer because it was not released yet. It was end of year. And so I want to show that to you. And I also just want to remind you that this is the information that's going to appear on the ballot in March, as well as our per pupil costs. So this information is worth just us looking at and having a conversation around so that we know what is happening. So if you take a look at page 2, the ELA results, you can see that the district overall was at 55% for last year. The state was at 53, so slightly above that, but still our performance over time is flat in the ELA category. So I did also look at our grade levels to see how they had performed over time. So the 5th grade that you will see on the left on this performance over time, this is from last year. So these are this year's 6th graders. So last year's 5th graders have 3 years of SAS data for ELA. So they have 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade. So you can see that they started out the highest in 3rd grade, they dipped quite a bit in 4th grade, they came back up a little bit in 5th grade. So as we kind of move down, the only grade level that is really where I would like to see it is 7th grade, which is our current 8th graders. We want them to improve each year and grow each year. And so that's what you see when you have systematic instruction, everyone is on board, right? We have a curriculum that is working for our students. So we already know this, but I think that we can see that, you know, with the other grade levels, we have years that they do well and not so well, and we're maybe not quite sure why. And so those point to some inconsistencies that we can look at. So when I first looked at this, I thought, oh my gosh, we have a problem in 4th grade, right? I have 2 years that 4th grade dipped. And then I looked at 2025, and 4th grade was the only year that had a dramatic increase. So that does not point to a challenge, right, in that 4th grade year. So it's still trying to uncover some of those pieces, is why do we see the fluctuations that we see. So that's ELA. I'm going to pause for any questions on the ELA part.
Well, I appreciate that 4th grade went up from 2024 to 40% to the 54%.
Yep.
But they, you know, at the end of grade 3, they were at 52%. Right?
So you're looking at 52% in 2024 grade 3?
Yeah.
And then,
Isn't that the same group as grade 4, 2025?
yes, so from 52 to 54. So they had a very small increase from the year before, but the year before in 24, they had 40% proficiency to 54. But I do understand what you're saying. That didn't increase in a way that we would like to see it, right? But it also didn't decrease. And I was identifying, the challenge here I saw is that I saw this kind of 14% decrease, and then looks like a 6% if my eyes were a little bit better, right? And I didn't see that happen again. I saw a 2% increase for the same cohort from the year before. Mm-hmm. But overall, they also were the only grade level to see an increase from their results the year before. So just sort of, I guess I would say it depends how you look at that, right? It's tough to determine causation on here. So a lot of us just spent some time yesterday at the MTSSB conference in Concord, and they were just talking a lot about effective intervention and just sort of when you're looking at your information and you see these inconsistencies, right, that is pointing you to the fact that you might just get lucky sometimes and that it's not this real strategic focus on instruction and curriculum that we need.
I guess for me personally, I'm more interested in cohort. Because then I'm looking at mostly the same kids and saying, okay, is this group of kids moving rather than comparing them to the previous year's group of kids?
Correct. And so, yeah, and so that's what I've put here. I've just provided you this as well if you wanted these numbers. But this is the cohort data, and I didn't start earlier with 3rd and 4th because they only have 1 or 2 years. So I wanted at least 3 years to be able to look and see how that group of students is progressing. And so, to me, the only one that looked the way I really would like to see it look, right, was that 7th grade. They're progressing every year, whereas the other grades, they have some blips up, down. It's pretty inconsistent. Okay, so this is just part of also trying to understand, is this a Barrington problem? Is it a regional problem? Is it, right, who can we talk to? Who's doing stuff well? So I looked at a lot of comparable districts that we say are comparable for a variety of reasons. Epping, Stratford, Newfound, Tamworth, Franklin, Henniker. All of those really looked similar to us. They were flat, they were all over the map, they were negative growth. There was nothing that I wasn't saying like, oh, let me call any of them. Nottingham, on the other hand, was kind of a shining star. So when I looked at the Nottingham ELA cohort data from 5th through 8th, not only did every cohort grow each year, but they also are increasing their performance every year as well. So I took a trip to Nottingham down the road just to talk with them about sort of what they're doing and think about what they can share with us that might be useful. And I think that there are some differences, right? They have one K-8 building, so they're all in the same place. So that makes it a little bit easier to have people on the same page. But really, she kind of just gave me some tips as far as thinking about classroom to classroom observations and really making sure that everybody is really on the same pace, right, and doing the same thing. So I've been kind of focused on that so far when I've been in different classrooms. So still kind of more conversations to be had, but I also attend the Bridges meetings with Nottingham, so certainly, you know, kind of looking at a collaboration with them, being neighbors and having things that are working and just kind of checking that out in the ELA perspective. They are also in a pilot year this year for their ELA programs, and they'll do their implementation next year. So these results are without kind of, you know, a real science of reading aligned curriculum. So just looking at instructional techniques with students in the classroom. Maybe I'll move back. Any other ELA before I move to math? Okay. All right, so math, we obviously know is a challenge. So when we look at kind of overall district performance, I've done the same thing here with cohorts, and then also looked at state and Barrington. So in 2024, the state proficiency was 43, we were 46, a little bit higher, still not really where we want to be. In 2025, the state was at 44, and we are now at 42. So we went from kind of 3% above the state average to 2% below in 1 year, and that's kind of a 4% decrease in 1 year. What I can't get anyone to tell me, so I've had to make up my own idea, is, especially with smaller groups, what is just natural variability per year based on the group of students, based on the test, based on participation. So for me, I've just kind of set the number as anything kind of 3% or under. I think maybe natural variability, 4% or higher, and I want to look at it a little bit closer. So that's kind of what I'm using right now for sort of a bar. So again, 5, 6, 7, and 8, these are now 6, 7, 8, and 9th graders. And looking at our math proficiency over time. So we would want to see our proficiency going up, not down. So 5th and 6th grade going down, 7th grade down, 8th grade up a little bit. I mean, they had a blip there in 6th grade, right? 6th grade was higher, and then, but overall trend. So I think that we see something similar that we see with ELA here is that we don't have something we can really clearly point to. We have numbers that are kind of all over the place depending on the students and depending on the teacher and depending on the instruction. So that is something that we need to certainly tackle and take a look at. I also do want to point out that the Barrington participation last year was 77%. Other districts are mid to higher 90s. So that also is just something we should consider. We're only looking at, you know, around 3/4 of our population when we look at the
Why is
information.
our participation rate so low? Like, don't the feds frown on that, like, pretty significantly?
Yes, but families have the option in New Hampshire to opt out, and that has been kind of a culture that has been happening here that I know Elizabeth is trying to work against. We've done some, we're doing some changes in scheduling this year for a variety of reasons, just to make sure that testing is more effective and less disruptive, that I'm hoping will decrease some of that, but continuing the messaging around this is important. I also wonder if appearing on the ballot lends a piece of importance to it, that it is something that we are being measured on as a community. So yeah. We would love families to opt in and to take that test.
I'm so sorry, I know this is your part. I'm just going to ask you or Deanna this question. Did we confirm what information legally we're allowed to put on it? It is just numbers, but there's no rationale or discussion point, right?
For people,
It's just
cost
for people,
average
cost
and SAS
SAS
proficiency data.
Okay.
So is it a combined per pupil, or do we specify middle and elementary?
They break them out, middle and elementary, so I have a question out to clarify, because there's so many changes with ballots and warrants and requirements this year that we're all working through, but the last update I heard was, because for some districts, they'll have a high school rate as well, right? So we would have elementary, middle rates for us.
Do we have to delineate special education costs for people as well as a separate?
No.
Okay, so next.
Thank you, sorry.
No, that's all right. So next SAS piece, just to think about, so far I've just presented you with, at least on these slides, with the district averages, right? But these do break out per grade level and per cohort. So because there has been a lot of conversation recently around 8th grade math, I thought it was worth just kind of taking a look at where we are with kind of proficiency compared to sort of sending schools. So if we think about Co-Brown, we think about Dover, we think about Oyster River, and we look at their kind of 8th grade cohort, as well as the state average. Barrington is fairly similar, a little bit ahead of Dover, a little bit below Northwood, and then I know there's been some questions about the Oyster River comparison, and I put it here to make it a little bit clearer. Don't think that Oyster River 8th grade math is a valid comparison, considering that they are at least double our score consistently over time. So we are not really, right, comparing apples to apples. It's kind of, an apples to oranges. So for a huge variety of reasons, right, that I don't work for Oyster River, I'm not going to get into that piece, but I will say that as an Oyster River parent who had conferences 2 hours ago, my child is on grade level in math, and they have a push-in math tutor that helps her every day. That is kind of a district focus for them. And then obviously they have a different demographic. But when I look at kind of where we are 8th grade wise compared to other schools, Barrington's the blue, so that 8th grade has been on an increased trajectory over the past 3 years. So we're in, year 3 of a program, highly qualified teacher, so we're starting to see that gain with our 8th grade. Okay, so that's the end of last year. Now shifting into this year, beginning of the year. So just some pieces of note as far as Acadians. So we talked about this summer that grade 1 really had great gains, great growth, and they have kept that. There was not kind of, a loss over the summer. They really started out very, very strong. So our 2nd grade cohort, flip over to that page. 2nd grade cohort only has 17% of students, and that below and well below, and then they are up to 83% at or above just walking right in the door, which is great, which is where we would love to see them. Students walking into 4th grade are the lowest in that cohort, and so I just kind of pointed out in my narrative that if you look at on page 3 at the bottom, that Acadians beginning of year, and this happens in all subjects, but over time our gaps between those below and above grade level get larger and larger. So that's why we really want to focus on that early intervention piece to try to keep those closer together so we can intervene before those gaps get so large that they build every year. And by the time you're getting up into middle school, it's very hard to catch up when you're that far behind. So that's where our Acadians beginning of year is.
Can I ask you a question,
Yep.
Emily? How can 38% of our kindergartners who have not entered school before this be well below beginning year kindergarten standards?
Right, because they expect some familiarity with letters and naming letters. And so if they don't come in with that from a preschool or family perspective, they consider them below grade level. So
Is some of their norming standard and stuff in states that have public pre-K and things like that, I would assume?
I would definitely assume that is the case. I would also say that for kindergarten, it is probably a little bit more accurate, certainly, to look at mid-year, because that's when they've all had opportunity for instruction. So to kind of watch some of the kindergartners, right, and some of them know the letters of their names, so some of it's just luck of the draw, right? Depending on what name you have, you might know more or less letters that are higher frequency. And so that's a piece that, right, ultimately we're reporting on, but can probably be pretty quickly remediated with instruction. Yep. iReady, beginning of the year, I pulled this maybe in a different way than has been done in the past, because I just wanted to kind of see where we start historically when you use the iReady category that's beginning of the year, and it's almost identical for this year and for the past 4 years. Is just that at or above in both math and ELA is starting in kind of that 80% range, which we don't really always find bears out throughout the year. So be curious to kind of look at MOI. I wonder, as I get to know the program of iReady, are they like more lenient at the beginning of the year? And I don't know that information yet. But when I just look at a 3-level and kind of look at that beginning of year for the past 3 years, that's there. You also have on page 4 a clearer kind of delineation by their domains. So looking at the different categories under ELA and under math. And so, right, as that number and operations category, when you look at the domain on that page 4 as being an area of focus, right, for the middle school, as being sort of foundational to some of those other pieces, that's their focus there. And hopefully you have that in color. I don't know if you do have that in color. Okay.
So I was laughing inside when you said easy to read.
I know.
So, I don't ever want you to see how many tabs I have open, but
You print it.
Oh, you printed it, huh?
I might be able to pull it up very quickly in color and show it to you.
Yeah, that's easier to read.
There you go.
Yeah, I guess that's probably my.
No, that was my fault. When I copied your full packets, I didn't hit
I
color.
have a different. Oh, yeah. Your request.
All right, so now we need to see if we can make it so the rest of us can see it. Maybe a little bit better. Okay, so still a little bit hard to read, but phonics, high frequency words, right? These are our highest at the beginning. And then depending on kind of how you sort, right, your 2 green categories, I would say probably vocabulary is next, and then kind of comprehension has been a weakness looking at. And I also had it here by grade level, just to look at kind of the differences there. So I compare that with the Acadians and just see if we're seeing similarities and differences. It doesn't look like I have the math on there. 1 second, you can test me on that too. All right, I might not be able to show that to you in color at the moment, but I can send it to you. You know, look at the this piece in color for later. Questions I can answer, things I can bring back to you in the future.
When will the next time be? Because I know we've talked in the past, but it was before, Emily, you were here, so it's not, wouldn't be fair, actually. Deanna, when will the next time be that we get an update on this? Because I remember last year us talking about one of the board's goals to hear more reporting in regards to student achievement, not just on the benchmark times of reporting, but because I also want to say, anyone listening, that obviously beginning of the year data is just that, and that of course we look at the lens of mid-year data a little bit differently because we've had time for instruction and not the summer slip. So, but I think that there's a big amount of runway between now and then. So when was the next time that we're planning to hear about just what are the different strategies we're doing? How are the strategies You got one to say.
Yeah, so
Sorry,
why don't we
it's getting
do two things? One, we have to get through budget, but that's what always bogs us down, right? So sometimes you have to just stick it on an agenda,
Yeah.
even though it's going to be challenging. So I think, one, we need to get together as a team and, dig deeper, because it's scattered, right? We haven't been able to pinpoint any one thing, but we've already done a lot of brainstorming around what are some simple things we can do, not to oversimplify, but anybody who's heard Rich's morning announcements, right? He always has a question of the day, and there's different things. So one suggestion Emily had was, well, hey, if we know that vocabulary is an area of weakness, why don't we use that platform to introduce new vocabulary words? So we're trying to come up with not hugely intensive, but, somewhat clever and maybe fun ways to hit some of those areas. So why don't we look at some of those pockets where we know we need to work on and come back with, here are the things that we're doing to seek improvement in those areas, and then also look at some trends of where we know we need to focus. And then you'll get mid-year data. So then we can take the beginning of year data, what have we done, and hope to see improvements in those specific categories.
Yes, that would be great, 'cause I'm interested to see, I just think it's a great opportunity where we have someone new,
Yep.
get that fresh pair of eyes on it, and interested to see what your goals will be for what do we want to see by that mid-year report, right? And just
So, and I also think there may be a data point that I can give you soon. It's the first time we're using it. So so we've done a lot of work with elementary report cards and just thinking about, are we reporting on things that no longer align with science of reading? And the answer was yes. So we've changed a couple of things in the report card to pull off some reporting categories that were only able to be assessed using kind of a leveled reader idea that we no longer use. So the grade levels at BES have determined that they are going to be using some iReady assessments to determine and report on some categories in the report card. So I'll be curious to see if that's something that I actually can sort of gather and compile and look at sort of that first term's information and see if I can compare that. And I can talk with iReady too and just sort of see how that component works, because that would be interesting to think about. So this is a little bit more long-term and something that I already know that we need to do and have had conversations with. Is one of the potential reasons that our scores are so low on SAS, right, is that students are just not as familiar with the test. So there are pockets and places where people are using those as kind of practice tests, but it maybe has been more of kind of a test familiarity as opposed to an instructional tool. So there is a lot of work at the state level, and I had kind of put that in my report, but we since then have booked the math specialist from the state to come in and really help us use some of they're called interim assessments, but they're basically like sample SAS tasks and tests, but to use those really for formative instruction in the classroom. So they're used for all students take them, and the teacher looks at the information on there to see where students have done well, where they haven't, and kind of tailor instruction towards that to look at some gaps. So one of the professional development opportunities in the area of math is this OGAP training, and it really looks at, it doesn't matter what the curriculum is, but it's your instructional approach to how and when you teach math. And their really most effective focus strategy is that you're using formative assessment with students. You're able to adjust instruction based on what they have and what they need. So it doesn't really matter what you use for formative assessment as long as you're getting that information and using that. So iReady does provide us with that information. I'm not sure that we're adjusting instruction based on that, so that's kind of an area of focus, but also using some of those SAS interim assessments throughout the year as part of the curriculum to really understand where students are and to help them improve in the areas that they need to in order to do well in those assessments. And so the SAS is really very well aligned to Common Core state standards. So if that is what we want students to be learning and know, right, that is a good indicator of if they are learning the standards that they need. And when you look particularly at math, we're looking really at that progression of what are the essential standards to get them to algebra and algebra readiness. So we know what those are and can kind of focus on those. So I think it's, there's a lot of approaches we can take, but that's something we're going to start with the middle school and just kind of looking at our assessment data so far. So SAS also provides what's called cluster data, so it's a much more nuanced, detailed view of each grade level and where they've done historically and where they are internally, like where they're doing well and where they have areas of weakness. So I've pulled apart all of that information so far for 5th grade, and I've shared that with the 5th grade teacher. I'm working on 6, 7, and 8, so they can also look at just performance over time in certain categories and say like, hey, we're doing great here, let's keep doing that, but maybe are we spending too much time there that we could pull some time to spend on areas that we're really struggling in? And so some of that work just needs to be done kind of from a data and curriculum perspective.
Thank you.
And this was the math, by the way. So, number and operations, I will read to you a little bit. And then algebra and algebraic thinking, then measurement and data, and then geometry. And that's, again, by district as opposed to by grade level.
So I'm assuming this is gonna get posted to the website. Can we also get it sent to us? Thank you.
Took one of the things off my list.
Sorry. Anything else for Emily? Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
All right, policies.
So you have it, you just don't have it in color, you mean?
Well, some of this stuff,
Yeah.
some of her slides up here, we didn't get.
Right, she created them tonight for talking points, but yes, we will, yep.
Yeah, in our packet, these were in color, that's fine. It's just the slides that
The actual
they
slides.
shared today that we didn't get, would be helpful to get.
Perfect.
And need to get added to the packet that gets posted. Yep. Thank you.
All right, so we're up to policies.
Just write myself a quick note. All right, so we've got a big old chunk, which I did not print because they're being recommended for rescinding, and so why print them? So we're continuing our clean out, if you will.
Purge.
Our purge, yes, of all of our quite old and/or call numbers, policies that NHSBA no longer has on the books or recognizes as being priority required by law policies. So I will read down through those unless somebody else would like to just read down through them as part of a motion, but we've got instructional.
Well, we have to read them as part of the motion, so we don't have to read them.
Yeah, okay, good, that's what I
Save
thought.
yourself.
You didn't want me to go through them all.
We should also add, though, that there's, not just NHSBA says that they're no longer recognized, but that, from what I remember, the majority of these already sit.
In
The reason
other
why they're not
policies,
recognized
yes.
is because they are the data has been moved to, and we had the team look through, thank you to the team who did that, the staff, to make sure and double check that information that was pertinent, because obviously some of this information from the titles are pertinent. So I just want to make sure people know we're not like getting rid of them. It's that they're housed in a different area. One of them was that the call number just actually changed itself, but the content was still there. So it's not, we're not getting rid of them, the information. It's just no
We're
longer accurate.
continuing on our quest to have all required by law policies as up to date as possible. Like within 3 years would be beautiful. It's just a very slow, tedious process, because sometimes you get to some that are amazingly important, and I'll jump down to the first reads, such as GBEB staff conduct. So that policy has sat looking pretty similar for many, many moons. When we looked at NHSBA's update for this year, we all went, oh my goodness, what is happening here? But the reason it shift is twofold. One, the descriptions around conduct shifted into GCQ. And then also, it is now in line with the New Hampshire Code of Conduct. So instead of having all of those definitions defined within GBEB, it's a direct relationship to the Code of Conduct that everybody who's certified in the state of New Hampshire as an educator is held to. So that's the major change there. So like I just explained, a lot of those definitions and that content went into GCQ. So that's a newly required priority, must have it, and mainly because it takes all those definitions from GBEB and puts them into GCQ. The next two are not required, but the policy committee is recommending them simply based on current and past practice. There are times when we do have to search students either coats or backpacks or what have you, their personal belongings, for a variety of reasons. You know, items that are not permitted on school premises, shall we say. That covers quite a few things. And so I don't know if anybody has had to do a student search before. You know, it's not a very comfortable thing to have to do. And we certainly wanted policy and procedure around that to protect all parties involved so that parents understand clearly the why and the process for what's happening, and administration has that process in front of them to follow in case I should say when we get into those situations. So it happens frequently enough throughout the year, not on a regular daily basis, but we have had to do it, so it is necessary. So there is a policy and procedure there for searches. We added things, not much, because we really do like to comply with all the legal hard work that HSBA does. But there were some spots there where we wanted to make sure we included families, guardians, not just parents, and then also making sure we reach out and make that attempt at phone contact before we go forward with any kind of a search. So we did add some of those pieces in there that felt more applicable to our smaller community. So there's both of those. And then KFR2 is one of the facilities policies. I did print another one and put it in front of your seat today because realized after it got posted to the packet that the name was removed, but the new hourly fee structure was not added. And realized that when we updated this policy a couple years ago, as you know, we've had to increase custodial and maintenance, as well as paraprofessional hourly rates, just to keep current with what's going on out in the world. So we needed to adjust those hourly fees for non-school hours, because if you're going to bring a custodian in, you want to make sure you're covering the cost of that and the district isn't having to absorb that. So it's a very minor adjustment to the actual hourly fee structure. We did have a lot of additional conversation around that policy, but we did a lot of facility use, and we didn't want to cause a change for anybody mid-stride, so we decided to wait on some of those bigger conversations around. A lot of other districts have separate fee schedules for classroom spaces versus, say, gym and field use spaces, because your gym and your the refurnishing of the floor and then your fields do become quite not only time but costly to upkeep. So that will be a future conversation, but we did have a two-time removed facility director's name still listed in the policy, so we just removed the name and just said facilities manager, because whenever you can avoid listing a name, do it, so you don't have to continuously update policy. And then, like I already added, the hourly rates were just adjusted.
I have to say, I always thought the room at the middle school was the auditoria. I've never seen it as auditoria. Because we used to joke, is it the auditoria or the cafetorium?
You know, I've seen
That's how
like
it appears
5
on the
different
old one.
iterations.
Yeah.
Cafeteria, cafetoria, cafetorium, auditoria, yeah, take your pick. So those were the adjustments for first reads.
I just have a question for GBEB and GCQ, because they both define immorality, but they define them differently. And I would think immorality is immorality.
Yes. Something is not seeming right to me.
This doesn't look like the newest one.
Agreed.
GCQ. This isn't what we.
So should we just hold on those two?
Yeah, can we hold on these two?
Actually, I
Or
was thinking
GCQ,
it was,
right? Isn't
I
it?
was thinking it was the opposite.
Or, I mean, well,
GBEB,
this is definitely not what
no, doesn't seem right to me. Because we took all those definitions and put them in GCQ. The wrong ones got in the wrong spot. Yep, let's bring those back next time once we clarify. They're too important to not
Just in case people think I don't pay attention.
do properly. They're never getting loved.
You secretly love policy, I knew
I was on policy, but when policy meets in the middle of a workday, I can't do that.
All right, so I'll take those. Yeah, so those we'll bring back.
So I make a motion to recommend to rescind the following policies: IH, IHBG-R1, IJJ, IKAA, IKD, IKD-R, IKF, it should be -A, ILBAA, and IMBC.
You missed I.
I miss II. Oh, and II, as listed.
I'll bold the policy call numbers next time. It gets confusing.
Especially when it's all built in.
Yep.
All
I'll second that.
right. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
And then I recommend for first read, JIH-R, and KF-R2, bringing back GB, BB, and GCQ back to committee.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, public comment. Public. Public online. Anyone? I don't see any hands. Do you, Mr.?
Nope.
All right then.
I make a motion to enter non-public citing RSA 93-A:3, 2A.
Second.
Okay, we have to have a roll call vote. Mr. Walker?
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Baker, aye.
Moyer Taylor, aye. All right, thank you, everybody.
We staying
Thanks,
right
guys.
here or we going the other way?